we're reconvened from closed session. And I'm going to move right into public comments on agenda items. I do have two people signed up, and I just want to remind everybody that this council meeting, we are held to our council bylaws, which we've adopted, and they are bylaws, so we do hold to them. The comment period is for comments to be or directed to council regarding agenda items, and council is not required to respond. And typically, we don't. It's time for organized public comments on it. We do ask that all comments remain respectful and relevant to agenda items, and please keep comments within the allotted time so a variety of voices can be heard. I know there's been comments about 2 minutes being the limit. That is our bylaw. If it does go over, that means somebody else doesn't get 2 minutes. You don't have to use your 2 minutes. You can use less. Have more people to speak. We have a 10 minute limit overall. And I do ask again. I know the gallery knows this, and certainly staff, council also know this. We don't allow personal tax interruptions or offensive language. And I prefer to keep people from clapping or cheering or booing or anything like that. This is for people to be council, staff, and the gallery to have a place where they can share without receiving any kind of feedback. With that being said, we'll move right into comment period. Ms. Pelchette, I have two here.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now make an open call for comments. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call calling once. I see one member of the gallery just.
You're up number one. Number one. So we're just making sure everybody's online as well. So. Ms. Sadler and Mr. Sadler, back to back. So come on up.
Thank you.
Just so you know, we do it because it's part of the bylaw as well to address everybody's Mr. and Mrs. or whatever Ms. whatever else. So, Sadler.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michele Sadler, and I am from 1115 Fellowship Drive. I just wanted to make a comment on the crucial repercussions of the decision that is going to be made. Simply put, the unintended effect of opting in to BC Regulations Bill 35 is the GST 5% taxes on house fair market value for any change of use. And I look at that as a retired person or a person who is trying to be retired. We need to, in order to retire, one needs to reduce debt before one can retire. And any GST change causes us to potentially have to take out a loan. Now that's based on fair market value. Most houses, million, 2 million, whatever, that's just an average. And based on square footage and the value of the home. That might mean for me as a person trying to retire and get out of debt in my 60s, that may mean that I have to take out a loan and further debt to $50,000 up to $100,000 to add. How old will I be when that is paid off? Will I be in my late 70s, 80s? What will it take for me to pay that off? When do I get to retire? Option one is, so if we want to continue to operate, we have a caretaker. Great, sounds perfect, right? We can operate with a caretaker. No, we cannot. What happens is the BC regulations, which is something we didn't know when all these things were being, accepted. They have to rent the entire home. So what does that do? It changes it from my renting out a short-term rental to my renting out the home as a long-term rental. 5% GST, there's my debt. There's my issue again. So do I rent it out to a person in the public? Turns from short-term rental to long-term rental. 5% GST.
Yes. Sadler, you know what? You're over your two, but I'll tell you what I'll do.
Okay.
You only have two people on here.
Yes.
So if you let Mr. Sadler speak, and there's still nobody in the gallery, then you can come back and finish.
Okay, I would like to finish with my retirees' perspective when Andrew is finished, or Mr. Sadler is finished. Thank you.
The first time you've ever called him.
Andrew Sadler, Mr. Sadler. 1110 Fellowship Drive, commenting on 7.1 on the agenda. So with the staff report that we had from the March 11th regular council meeting, there was a couple of concerning things that came up for me as a tenant. So you've seen me a couple times at this point, but I think it's important for me to continue telling my story. So two main points that concerned me. One is that it seemed pretty clear to me that myself as a supplier host will have to be the one that reports income. And so that's concerning to me because it raises all these other questions like, does this go on my taxes? How do I pay my landlord? Do I just siphon all the money to them? Will that look fraudulent? It raises all these questions and concerns for myself. Number two is that it seems clear that equal responsibility will be on myself as a supplier or host, as well as on my landlord as the property host. Also very concerning to me because as we're finding out, this is a very complicated legislation and we're all just learning along the way. And there are some really steep financial penalties for non-compliance if we do something that is not compliant, just out of mistake even. So these are some pretty major risks for myself as a tenant. And so that's leading me to come to the conclusion that this is too high risk for me to continue in this tenant situation. And I'm not alone in this. I have a coworker as well who's coming to this conclusion that he's seriously considering not continuing his tenancy situation because it's too high risk. This is not our landlords pressuring us. This is just simply the consequence, just simply the legislation itself that is making this too high risk for us. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. And I just want to encourage you that it's okay to admit you were wrong. And I just want to, as long as you do the right thing. I appreciate that. Thanks so much, you guys.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sadler?
Sure. Thank you for round two. I appreciate it. I just wanted there's three options. One, you get your caretaker, we get the GST. When you get someone from the public, we're still hit with the GST. And the third option is, hey, we cannot make the financial issues and we're forced to sell. This has never, ever been something that we have thought this is our home. To sell is not our intention. If we're forced to do so, then we are hit with capital gains of 50 to 66%, et cetera, of anything from when we cleared the land, when we used the land, the wood from the land to build it with the dream of this is going to be ours and our children's. And that is an absolute shame to have to think about selling that. And then the capital gains that we're forced into at our retirement years when this was not our plan. That ruins our retirement. So I'll conclude since I've been given extra time here. I've got a lot of different points here, but I don't feel that it's fair to ask retirees when we're trying to get people to age in place. It's not fair to ask them to go out and get loans or some administration changes, this, that, and the other. Please consider holding off and please consider opting out so that things can be settled and sorted with the larger government before we consider opting in again. So please opt out and save our retirement. We're stuck. We have no choice. Thank you.
Michele, your final comment. We have a couple more minutes.
I will continue to call for anyone else who would like to make a comment, calling twice. Calling 3 times. No one else is signed up for comment.
Okay, we'll move on to a business initiated by council members. So accommodation plan. We have a verbal report from Councilor Stillman.
Well, I just felt like it was appropriate to consider opting out of the principal residence requirement. I think that the principal residence requirement could have been a perfect option if we were still able to have legal non-conforming, because it would have protected people like Mrs. Sadler. So I think with the new information with the GST implications and just the perception that the public was unaware that these changes were going to take place with the lease requirements. I feel it's appropriate at this time to opt out of the principal residence requirement. So, shall I read my motion?
You can, if you read your motion, we can go around and you can read your motion, discuss the motion. In the motion itself.
Okay, I move that the meeting oh no, that's not the right motion. I move that council requests that the District of Tofino be added back into the exempt land list of short-term rental accommodation regulation and opt out of the principal residence requirement, and that staff be authorized to submit the request to the BC Minister of Housing before March 31st, 2025.
Sorry. Here. Okay, well, let's, why don't we go around the room? Councilor, you want to start, Councilor Master? Go around and we'll give everybody 2 rounds and then we'll,
Question for Councillor Sloman. Do you believe short-term rentals in Tofino need to be controlled? Okay. So what is your idea to how we control them?
I think we can look at improving maybe our enforcement.
How difficult to be?
come down the table, Councilor Steer.
Thank you, through the chair. I think everybody in this room is well aware of the debate that has been going on, and I'll just reiterate the points why I'll be supporting Councillor Sloman's motion. I think one of the, beyond the, when we look at the 30,000 foot level and we look at what, as Councillor Sloman has indicated, that we do know that we have to regulate short-term rentals, as this council has been doing. And there are some very definitive and prescriptive tools, in my opinion, which are a better solution to the proposed Bill 35 that we have opted into. And so for that reason, I think I will be supporting this motion, and we'll have the ability through our zoning bylaw review to be much more prescriptive in the tools that will be available to us to regulate STRs in a much more comprehensive way that looks at the 30,000 foot as well as being very prescriptive in where we want those zoning bylaws to be effective. And short-term rentals is one piece of that much larger puzzle in our community. So I'll leave it there and pass it on down the line. Through the chair.
I personally think I've exhausted everything I have to say on this subject.
I'm going to go to here and I'm going to give everybody a chance to speak twice, but I'm only going to speak once. I'll speak in the middle. So, Councillor Chambers.
I would be supporting Councillor Sloman's motion. The biggest, there's a couple deciding factors to me. One is that we've been making these decisions around opting in, always with some information missing. And every time it comes to a discussion at this table, we're receiving new information. I think if we support opting out at this point, take some time to build a solution that fits Tofino. I think we have to look at how we enforce short-term rentals, some of our bylaws around them, perhaps we can clean up. Chamber of Commerce spoke to council at last meeting, and I support that to find a Tofino-made solution. We have some stated goals in both our strategic plan and in our OCP, in all of our sort of guiding documents. And council has been working around those goals. And those are about providing housing. And short-term rentals is actually one way of providing some long-term residency. I don't think it's the only or the best solution, and we have to work on that on a whole number of fronts. As we have been moving forward, we've been looking at excluding short-term rentals from new zonings. We've been looking at adding housing as an amenity contribution in new projects. We've been looking at building new houses and through the Housing Corporation. We've been working on that on a number of fronts, and short-term rentals have been and can continue to be a contributing factor to increasing the availability of housing. And we've heard from some of the tenants in short-term rentals that not only has it provided them with some housing, it's provided some security in housing, and it's provided even somewhat subsidized or maybe more affordable housing in some cases. I'm not saying that's with all cases, but it can be part of a solution if we put a pause on opting in and look at this more closely and design something that works for Tofino, that fits with the direction that we've been going. And we can bring the community along with the decision. So we may opt in or out, stay opt out at some point in the future, or not. But so far, we've been making all these decisions up against a deadline of March 31st with little or no staff input or time to get that staff input, and not enough of a public process to bring the community along with the decisions that we're making. So that is why I would support opting out of this.
Yeah, I do think that the bulk of C-35 aligns with our bylaws and is supported by the community. What isn't supported and what doesn't seem to work for people is some exact requirements to register tenants or to register the operator of the business. And just what I'm hearing from tenants who are not, they're not sure, they don't feel secure. And also hearing from landlords that they don't want to lose their tenants, but they don't really understand this well enough or feel able to comply with it. That's my biggest problem. It's not the bill as a whole, it's just this one specific part that people are stumbling on, is how to give the tenants, how to prove that a tenant lives on site, but without having to go through registering the business through the tenant. So I think until we get clarity on that, if I would support, or I feel that district's own bylaws support us best.
I think there has been a lot of misinformation, disinformation. Certainly I've been learning lots. I do want to say that this, maybe people don't know this, but, up until the middle of 2022, our business regulation bylaw read as follows. No person shall operate a bed and breakfast or short-term rental, commercial guest house, or any other form room rental from a dwelling unit that rents rooms, suites, or other accommodation rooms, temporary accommodation, unless they are resident on the property. Furthermore, have a business license. That is 2022. That changed. To open it up a bit, but our zoning bylaw, our current zoning bylaw still today, and I want to read this so everybody knows it, is that a short-term rental is a home occupation, and it was put in home occupation so that it would be clear to everyone that it was an accessory use to residential. That's what it says in our bylaw. And the person operating the business had to be resident with one limited exception. That was a licensed property management company. This is the way it was. And it was only briefly opened up with our business regulation bylaw for one full business license year, 2023. Sorry, 2022. That was it. Short-term rentals have never, either in our business license regulation bylaw, are never meant to be a primary commercial endeavor with an accessory and in some cases disposable tenant. That is what has happened. It's happened. Not supposed to be that. They get residentially taxed. We don't even have a sweep minimum anymore. So what happened? A very short period of time is that even though our OCP, which document says that we are supposed to discourage short-term rentals, we're supposed to take pains to restrict short-term rentals and otherwise monitor our town for the negative effects on our neighborhoods, which has happened, and affordability, tenant availability, tenant rents. The opposite has happened. In 2020, a short-term rental, commercial short-term rental with an accessory use was $900,000. The same short-term rental sold for 1.85 in 2022. Now, all houses went up a little bit. That is over 100% increase. The rental rates, when this town opened up housing to commercialization, the rental rates for long-term tenants went through the roof and doubled. What we did, what this does right now, the way we are right now, is it incentivizes the commercialization of residential properties and homes. If I was to move right now away from here, sell my house, who would buy it? It would be an investor. It would turn it into a commercial accommodation. And they would put a tenant. That is the highest and most profitable use, and that's what happens. The same with empty properties. The reason they haven't sold, the reason houses haven't sold to investors is because we opted in. What we opted into, what existing regulation we have right now is it's slightly weaker than we had in 2022. That's the reality. We have, and when I look at why we're here, and to think this is failed enforcement. I mean, we have failed as a community to rein in short-term rentals. And to think that we're going to go back somehow and make it work now. I mean, there's some things like the legal non-conforming laws, that's going to work. But to think that we're somehow going to do this, I mean, we're not even really enforcing our zoning now. That's the way I feel with our zoning land use. That's what I like. So that's my thing. I think that we should remain opted in. I think it will inhibit that investor crush that's happening. It will end up in tenancy rental rates opening up, coming down. It will see house prices come back down to where they are not primarily commercial, which is what they are now. So that's my opinion. I hold to it. I'm only going to speak once. I'm going to go everybody else a chance to speak again, and then we'll call a question. Councilor Sloman.
Yeah, I do think we did gain one, whether we opt in or not, we did gain one valuable tool from this bill, and that is that everyone does need to be registered. So you will need to have a license, because in my career as a landscaper, I did see people who were not operating legally, and now they will have to go get a business license through the District of Tofino. They will still need to register. So I do feel like we are going to get a bit more assistance with regulating for vacation rentals as it is.
I'll just say, you know, I'm not going to repeat myself about short-term rentals and advantages and disadvantages. I agree that zoning is the ultimate way to go to control this thing. And I've always felt we should opt in. That would give us the time to get our zoning under control. And so therefore I will still be opting in for the next year if possible. But I think to opt out at this stage is just sending the wrong message. And I think once our zoning is under control or satisfactory, then I'd be prepared to opt out.
I will only comment just a little bit because I think over the discussions over the last year and change, I've made those points clear. I do want to touch on, though, on the decommercialization of community land, 100% in support of that concept. But I do want to touch on how zoning is the key tool for that. And our ability to, and I want to push back a little bit on the enforcement conversation, because I'll give an example where we use zoning as the short-term rental. And I'll use the example of South Chesterton Beach, where it was clearly in violation of the zoning. And we had court cases that went forward on that. And that was through the enforcement of the District of Tofino. That's went on, as one knows, for a long time. So I do want to push back a little bit on where the enforcement and in our failure. It is council's prerogative to push forward those things that we believe are in the best interest to pursue with our limited enforcement capabilities. So that is our responsibility. And where I still think zoning has the ability to correct not just the short-term rental, but in general, when we look at the commercialization of our housing stock, it is, as Councillor McMaster pointed out, the key tool that we have available to us. And we want to look at this conversation in a much more comprehensive way to address what we consider some of the housing crises. But as was pointed out by Councillor Anderson, around we already have good work being done in terms of housing strategy. And I don't want to touch on again through the Tofino Housing Corporation, through any new development proposals that have come forward, we have absolutely been clear about no more commercialization of your property, although we will allow you to have a secondary suite to currently give more tenancy opportunities there. So I'll leave it there. And I do agree that we do have to have conversations about the commercialization of our housing stock in our community, because it is in some ways an existential conversation, as Mayor Law has pointed out. But I think the key to do that is through public engagement, through a zoning bylaw review, so we can be very clear that those solutions can be made here and the most appropriate solutions available.
Yeah, just one more time, I supported the initial decision to opt in, and I changed my mind on that because as we've seen, we've made that decision without understanding all the financial intricacies of the final legislation and the repercussions of those. And we are still at this point learning how it's working out. So that is mainly why I want to opt out, and to fully understand that before we continue with an opt-in situation. So that's all.
I think if we are anticipating waiting for a perfect moment, it's never going to happen. The perfect moment was 10 years ago. If we're waiting until we understand every intricate detail of financial implications for each individual house, that is never going to happen. It is going to be a constantly evolving, changing thing. And I think needing more time after some people at the table have been here for multiple iterations of council, I think we've been exposed to lots of input and ideas. And I do think this is the time to act on something that gives us tools that we've been seeking.
All right, well. Then, if there's no further questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. It was,
That staff be authorized to request the District of Tofino back to the exempt land list in the short-term rental accommodation regulations immediately rather than wait for it to take effect on November 1st, 2020.
Read that again, please. I didn't quite know that, sorry.
That staff be authorized to request the District of Tofino back to the exempt land list and the short-term rental accommodation regulations immediately, rather than wait for it to take effect on November 1st, 2020. And I have a couple of reasons why I would like to request this motion.
this, question. Is this possible? We're asking the province to break their Bill 35 rule. Well, I just didn't anticipate this. My understanding is that the bill popped out in 31st, it takes effect November 31st. Is there a leeway to that?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of whether there's any exceptions to that rule. They haven't been, it's not included in regulation. The council would like staff to look into that, but it's, that's council's review. I don't know.
Okay, well, you read the motion. Seconder? I'll second the motion. Seconded by Councillor Steer. You can speak to your motion.
Okay, yeah, I feel like the tariffs have created uncertainty in our economy, and I feel like our business community could really use the support this summer while there's still some cash flow in Canada. And then my other reason is a lot of people are not able to get confirmation of whether, even if they have a principal resident, if they are meeting the requirements of the registry. I know I personally have been waiting for 6 weeks. So it's just like not really, people don't have any clarity if the registry is gonna work for them.
I want to comment on the side of feeling that might be coming up. I totally understand the motive behind it, and that, you know, if it's going to mean, even if we opt out or have opted out, if it would mean someone's still keeping their housing through this year, that would be a driving factor for me. However, we don't know if this is possible. So I would hope that everyone here today knows that if we do vote to ask staff to do this, we may find out that it's not possible, because this isn't something we've researched. So this isn't a guaranteed factor.
I have a comment. We council has voted to opt in. And that takes effect. We knew that would be this year. So we are essentially, I guess it's not quite the same, but okay, maybe I'll pass it on here.
I think the use of the language that is affecting a personal situation is concerning to me.
Anybody else? You know what? I'm opposed to this, to be honest. I think that we have a lot of work to do to ensure that short-term rentals do not negatively impact our community. So, I don't even think we can. Councillor Steer.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that point. Thank you through the chair. I'm still looking for clarification on the motion is basically to have staff look at what the options, in essence, to have this Bill 35 regulations in terms not to take effect for November 1st. So in essence, to have this season available, there's no implications around, if it's a yes or a no, we just don't know. And you're looking for clarity if that is an option.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One additional comment, each community that had this requirement imposed on them from the beginning, the ones that requested a delay were all denied. Just for some.
So read the motion again.
I move that staff be authorized to request the District of Tofino back to the exempt land list in the short-term rental accommodation regulations immediately, rather than wait for it to take effect on November 1st.
Any other comments?
I'd rather staff see if it's possible rather than request. And then council can discuss it once we get the decision.
Make an amendment. Master has the table if he wants.
I'll move that staff
You can't make another motion while there's one on the floor.
You have to make an amendment.
make an amendment to that motion that staff be authorised to determine if it is possible to exempt.
Maybe I'll look to my corporate services office.
Language.
Sorry to interrupt you. This might change the nature of the motion to direct staff to request opt-out, to direct staff to inquire if it's possible. That's the change. Do you think that's a significant change to the intent, or would you consider that an amendment?
Thank you, Mayor Law. So first off, we have the motion that was just passed by council, and now we have a new motion on the table. And as I understand it, the motion is that staff be authorized to request that the province of British Columbia and the district, add the district back to the exempt land list. So that's currently the motion that Sullivan has put on the table, and McMaster is able to amend that motion.
I'm just asking for your opinion on the amendment. His amendment is to direct staff to request if it's possible to earlier than November.
That's a council decision. And
Okay, I just look at that. I just look at the professional opinion. It's on the table. I'll second it. That's the amendment. Now we can vote on the amendment. There's no further comments on the amendment.
I'm just looking for clarity on this. So Councillor Sloman's original motion was seeking staff to request that we opt out by a certain time. The amendment is that we will direct staff to find out if it is possible for us to opt out, and then we would vote on that coming into effect prior.
That's right.
Is there time to do any of this? In that case, I feel that the original motion would be more expedient because staff are simply making a request. And that will be the method in which they find out whether or not it is possible.
So, fine. Any other comments on the amendment? Before I call the vote on the amendment. Does everybody understand what's happening? Okay, so I'm going to call for a vote in favor of the amendment. Okay, you didn't have your hand up? Okay, opposed? No, this is the amendment, not the main motion. Okay, so the amendment is defeated. So then we'll go on to the main motion, which we've already seen without the amendment. And no further discussion, all in favor of the motion. And opposed, motion's carried. Thank you. Super, we're moving, we're gonna have a 30-minute break now? 20-minute break. Okay, so I will call a recess for 20 minutes. Back to the final. We'll reconvene from the break and move into 8.1 Community Children's Center funding update. Who's it?
If I may, Marilyn, we wanted to make sure we had that on as a separate agenda, but our chief financial officer is gonna start things out. We're kind of putting the two agenda items together.
Okay.
One presentation, and so I'll just pass it over to you for now, and then Ms. Hutchinson will come up and present on the children's center.
Oh, super.
Morning, Mayor Council. This morning, we are going to have a look at the third draft of the 2025 to 2029 draft financial plan. About the presentation, please feel free to interrupt me with any questions or comments or anything that Councilor Mayor would like to know in addition to what I'm presenting. As an overview of what's ahead of us in this presentation, we will start with a Community Children's Center update. That would be followed by a financial plan timelines. Then we will dive into the financial plan overview for 2025-2029, starting with the changes since the last draft. Having a look at the consolidated budget for this current fiscal year, followed by an overview of the asset management plan. Continuation of the overview, we'll have a property taxation section, during which we will look at the municipal property taxation as well as the 2024 completed assessment roll, followed by non-market change calculated for 2025. In addition to that, what we will see on the screen will be the tax rates for 2025, a few examples, a few drafts of that. And we will finish that section with a couple of options regarding the balancing the budget and finishing up with the next steps. And at this point, I would like to turn the presentation to Ms. Hutchinson to speak on Children's Center update.
Sorry. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I get the wonderful opportunity to provide us with some great news from the Community Children's Center. So we have officially been welcomed into the $10 a day program for the Community Children's Center, which is incredibly exciting for our families and community here. A little bit of a timeline. So we were invited to apply in November of 2024. Our application was successful this March, and we will officially begin the $10 a day program as of April 1st. And just for a little background, this is a program that is funded by the province of British Columbia. And just so everyone knows, I'm not speaking on behalf of the province for this presentation. But it is a program funded by a partnership with the federal government through the Canada, British Columbia, Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement. And this program is provides funding for eligible operational expenses, which will be reflected in the financial plan presented today. The program goals are to provide affordable childcare options for families, and it is administered by the Childcare Division within the Ministry of Education and Childcare. And oops, there we go. And so some of the impacts that families will experience who are enrolled in the program. So for full days, so that's 4 hours or more for 5 days a week, they will expect to pay a maximum of $200 per month. And for those enrolled for full days, for 4 hours or more, for 1 to 4 days, so that's maybe a family that's only coming for Mondays and Tuesdays or Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, will expect to pay $10 a day up to a maximum of $200 a month. Currently, we do not offer any half-day spots for the center, but sometimes we have a family that just needs some half days for transitioning into the center. So for that scenario, they will pay either $140 maximum a month up to $7 a day for part-time care. So in addition to this program, families are eligible to apply for the Affordable Childcare Benefit, which is additional funding on top of the $10 a day program. So this is based on a family's income story or makeup, and is income tested by the province, and parents apply for that benefit directly. But in some cases that for eligible families, they may pay less than $10 or virtually zero in some cases. So that is a great program on top of the $10 a day program. And so for the financial impact to our operations, this will be included in the 2025 to 2029 financial plan. And our funding term for this agreement is for 2 years, from April 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2027. So you will only see that reflected in the plan for those 2 years. And oops, now I'm going too fast. And so I just want to say the Community Children's Center is extremely excited. Sorry, it's been an emotional ride for this. And sorry. The District of Tofino gratefully acknowledges. Sorry. We gratefully acknowledge the financial contribution of the province of British Columbia for the $10 a day program through the Canada, British Columbia. Oh my gosh, thank you. As a parent, this is huge. Gratefully acknowledge the financial contribution of the province of British Columbia for the $10 a day program through the Canada, British Columbia, Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, happy to answer, obviously.
It's super duper. Fantastic. Excellent.
Thank you. And it is excellent. It is a long time coming. And I think not only, Tofino and been going at this for a while, our own municipal daycare, I think there's only 3 in the whole province municipally funded. I do, and also Ucluelet was successful. So our region has been, impacted greatly by this. I think you may be speaking to this later, but and I'm sure this will have financial impacts on our financial plan moving forward. And I don't know if now or maybe later, it's probably going to come up. So if it is coming up later, you don't have to answer now, but I'd be curious to see how that would impact because I know we do have about 600,000 difference, and I'd be curious to see how this will impact that number.
I've gone. I remember when I started counselor. Pressure. Conversations, tax burden. And I remember how that turned around. And basically council fought and staff fought to improve that service and invest in that service. And this is a hard one battle, and it's just such a fantastic. I just want to thank you.
Yeah, I use the Cle-wick Center when my kids were little, so I totally share your tears. I understand how valuable this is.
Super. All right.
Awesome. And I'll pass it back over. Go ahead.
Thank you. Looking at the timelines that we have ahead of us, and even at the previous event that we had, we'd like to start the timeline slide with the event that occurred on February 6th, 2025, when we had in this very space the public engagement event was open to Tofino community and people interested in learning more about 2025 to 2029 financial plan and the projects ahead of us for this for the next 4 or 5 years. During the event, information was provided on capital and operating projects, as well as the consolidated 2025 financial budget. Attendants were engaged, questions have been answered on planned project. Overall, I would say that it was a successful event on both ends of community and council and district. Following this meeting, 2 dates ahead of us, April 15th, when we will have the 2 bylaws of financial plan and tax rate. And on May 6th, we will look at the adoption. Within the budget package for this meeting, council can see the 2025 consolidated revenue and expenses by service area. And as a second document, the line by line third draft of the 2025 to 2029 financial plan. And diving into the financial plan overview, we'd like to start with a bit of look at how we ended in this moment with the current balance to be closed. To remind that the target was the base municipal taxation for 2025, just a bit over 5 million. That excludes the CNI levy, also the debt, but it does include the non-market change, which had to be added as we received it from the BC assessment as part of the completed roll. And in December, we were looking at about 1 million to close to balance it. In the second draft, through a budget adjustments, we managed to reduce it by 136,000. And the second draft, we were looking at 887,000 to be closing to balance the budget for 2025. Since then, as my colleague mentioned regarding the Children's Center, that brought us savings at 225,000, which is very close to the amount that council can see on the screen. So basically, that program is brought us the savings between second draft and third draft. And at this point, the draft number 3, we are looking at value to be closed to balance the budget of $603,000.
Councilor Steer.
Yeah. Thank you. So I understand that the savings from the $10 a day implementation is reflected in that budget adjustment of 221,000. Did I understand that correctly?
The chair, yes, the answer is yes.
So we still have 600,000 to go.
That is true.
Okay, thank you.
And looking at the consolidated budget, I have two slides. I will start with the expenses and that will be followed by the revenues slide. The three categories being operating, capital, and transfers. The bigger one being the operating, the biggest groups. Here we have public works and administration. Those are normally the biggest areas that are making up the operating budget. The capital is way lower value than last year, which was more than 30 million. So this year we are more on the planning and operating side of business. And transfers, it's a similar value, around 5 million in terms of expenses. For revenues, again, the landscape looks a bit different than last year. What we do have what we do have in terms of surplus, we are using 746,000 as part of the process of balancing the budget. The debt, that is mostly the debts servicing for the wastewater treatment plant. The CNI levy, it has the same value as last year at 1.9 million. And reserves, reserves and grants have values similar to last year. What we do have, what I would like to grab the attention is the taxation dollars that we are trying to close the balance on. We are sitting at 5.6, which gives us the balance mentioned earlier of $603,000. Again, that value includes the non-micro change, which kind of had to be included as it was provided by BC assessment. I would like to add to this to the 2025 financial plan in general. We do brought in front of council some proposals regarding the addressing the tariffs that are coming. And during that process, we identified around $11,000 as estimated increases in hydro and fuel. Those are still to be included. Also, second point I would like to make is the inflation rates that was used for the 2025 budget. We kept it at 2%, basically trying to hold the line. Bank of Canada is mentioning a range of 1 to 3%, and they are doing all they can to keep it within that range. Saying that if any major changes will incur and the 2% is not relevant anymore for the budgets of 2025, we will we'll bring it in front of council for further considerations. Looking at how the two previous slides are being broke down in terms of percentages. On the right-hand side, we can see the expenditures. Now, that picture looks, again, way different than last year. Last year, we had capital of 58% and operating at 30% and transfer of 12%, which shows that 2025 will be more of an operating will be much lighter on capital projects and more focused on operating. For revenues, again, last year we had grants at 40%, mostly due to wastewater treatment plants. Users fees were at 12, taxation at 11, and we can see a flip for 2025. User fees are the biggest right now at 27%, followed by transfers and reserves. In regards to surpluses, right now, again, the numbers on the screen are unaudited. We're in the middle of finalizing the audit for 2024. But the three reserves, three funds that we have right now, we started at just over 2 million for the general and 500 for water and 740 for sewer. The 805 allocation, this is due to a few bigger capital projects that we have for 2025, and the 267 and 188 values allocated for 2025 to 2029 are to balance the budget. That to say that all three funds are in a positive value. I mean, the sign is negative because that's kind of accounting. But what I would like to get your attention is to the general funds, which right now has an estimated value of 1.5 million. That will be the value that will be looked at later on when we are looking at the options on how to close the gap on the current budget, on the balancing the current budget. So that is one thing. In terms of long-term debt servicing, the treatment plant currently has a 10 million loan secured. That was in 2024. It's a 30-year loan. The second piece to it is we are looking into an additional 6 million loan to be secured in 2025. To say that this is subject to change, the value will depend on how the numbers needed will look at the end of the summer. The intention is to work on lowering as much as possible the fixed debt, so we will incur as less debt as possible. But right now, the estimated loan to be added to it is 6 million. The breakdown of the next 5 years, it has the four components: the service reserve, property tax, MRDT, and gas tax. Gas tax, due to stacking rules, starts only in 2026. And in terms of service reserve, the split between the 5 years, that kind of shows the current value of that service reserve, which right now sits at 509,000. So that will exhaust that service reserve towards the debt for the treatment plant. MRDT has a full value of 400,000. And again, the gas tax at 174,000 starting 2006. And in terms of property tax, for 2026, we have it at 278. And 2026 to 2029, it's a value of 258. And speaking of assets, now,
Mr. Steer?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the MRD contributions coming in. Is 2029 the end of that agreement term? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, we, through the chair, we've just begun our discussions on MRDT renewal, which the current agreement expires May 1st, 2027. So as the financial officer had indicated, this scenario is based on borrowing and fixing in $16 million. We're doing whatever we can to draw down the debt as low as possible, trying not to fix anymore. But we may have to, likely not the 6 million, but we don't have enough information that we can share with council right now. So in terms of adopting the financial plan and looking at the next 5 years, we're gonna just remain steady on this course, but this is likely going to look quite different next year.
At this point in the presentation, I would like to turn the presentation to Mr. Kirkland to speak on asset management.
Mayor and Council, give a quick update on the asset management program here. So this year, staff will be working towards completing an asset management strategy and an update to the asset management investment plan sometime mid this year. In terms of individual plans, the plan which was presented to council late 2024. We're looking to move that from a draft into a final version based on some feedback that we're looking to receive from council today. Later on this year, in the latter half or latter quarters of 2025, staff will be completing the transportation and water asset management plans. And then as staff are completing sewer and stormwater master plans this year, we'll be looking to completing asset management plans in the sewer and storm drainage disciplines in the next couple of years and moving into buildings and structures in 2027. The long-term state sustainability is a big goal for asset management. Staff are making decisions on various acquisitions, renewals, and disposals of various assets. Capital and infrastructure allocations will be further informed by the development of these plans as the district moves into the future. A quick one, two,
You have
four.
to point it
At this, okay. Thank you. So kind of looking at specifically the fleet asset management plan, which staff are starting to enact and follow through with the capital investments and renewals. Components of it this year be looking to replace a truck for the labor team in Public Works to increase the size of that truck so it can accommodate the size of the crew and also the tools that are required for them to perform their work. Be looking to acquire a new vehicle for the facilities maintenance working team, which coincides with looking to increase the size of that workforce as well. Prius replacement, after further review, staff have decided to defer that due to the condition of that asset. Still being in good condition, we're going to push that down a couple of years and reassess on a yearly basis in the financial planning processes. Multi-use pathway maintenance equipment, so namely the multi-hog as it's referred to. So the multi-use pathway, it's a critical asset. Many capital investments over the years in the multi-use pathway, and staff want to ensure that the asset service life for the multi-use pathway is optimized as much as possible. In terms of acquiring or the new acquisition or replacement of the existing maintenance equipment, and supporting the desire and the need to acquire the multi-hog unit, staff have reviewed renting, repairing, replacing like-for-like performance, looking at staff health or ergonomics when performing it, safety while operating the unit to continually move forward and the request to purchase that piece of equipment. Also with respect to the multi-hog, there's additional levels of service that can be utilized by purchasing this unit with further attachments for snow removal, or grass mowing, and also for sweeping attachments for continuing with maintenance on the multi-use pathway.
Mr. Steer. Through the chair. Thank you. And Simon, just a quick question in terms of where we're talking about some of the capital and some of those acquiring. And of course, maintenance makes our assets last longer. And now when we look at acquiring a new equipment, and you're specifically referring to, I know, one piece of equipment, but in general, when I think of some, and this is just something that popped into my mind because you had mentioned about the contributions to the multiple use path that this equipment. I know this might be stretching it, but with RMI funding, is capital or equipment purchase is something that is specific to an asset that has been funded through RMI. Would that be a consideration? I know it's stretching it, but I have to ask.
That's a great question, Councillor Steer, and through the chair, I may defer the RMI funding program to either Ms. Atiena or Mr. Rogers, as I'm not a subject matter expert in the different clauses in that funding stream.
Atiena.
Chair and Council, Councillor Steer, it is a good question, and I know that that is sort of an area that we look to, particularly when we're addressing some of the assets that we have built with RMI funds. Unfortunately, at this time, it's not we're not able to use RMI for those types of expenditures. However, we are in conversations with the province to have a look at what additional operating expenses we incur or staffing level expenses we incur as a result of that.
Great. I think that will answer some of the questions that might come down the line on other topics. So thank you.
Thank you. And to close out, specifically this purchase of equipment, staff have looked at financing versus outright purchase. Does smooth out how the funding is utilized. Looking at the interest on funding versus how much interest is gained on the capital and infrastructure levy investments, the value in financing certain components of, or 50% of the multi-hog unit that's underway the interest that's gained on the investments. Yes. So 20-year fleet AM plan. So still speaking with respect to the fleet asset management plan. So it does encompass the entire district fleet, which involves the Tofino Volunteer Fire Department and the various vehicles and equipment that is used, vehicle or fleet equipment that's utilized in that department. The emergency program, there are a couple trailers that this program does have and for future growth. So fleet asset management encompasses that, as well as recreation and of course the largest component of the district fleet, the public works vehicles and fleet equipment. So the goal is mentioned a couple slides earlier, is 20-year sustainability. As the asset management program matures, staff will be looking at what the longer term asset management planning will look like, 50 years and then on to like 100 years and building out from a high level what those projections would look like. At this time, with the fleet asset management plan and looking at what the current contributions are, there's kind of three different options that our staff are looking at. So right now, if the district does not change the current investment or yearly allocation to the fleet asset category or CNI levy category, we find that following the fleet asset management plan, that fund would be inadequate or operating at a deficit by 2037, 12 years. Staff see that if the fund contribution or allocation is increased by $58,000 per year, which does not include any inflation, the fund is sustainable, but there is some level which we identify as medium risk by not addressing the inflation component. If the allocation was increased by $76,000 a year, plus which would include a 2% annual inflation, that would make the fund sustainable and have a lower level of risk, as there is some level of inflation being incorporated into the plan. And yes, the 2025 to 2029 financial plan for the fleet, as previously presented to council, is based on the fleet asset management plan.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. You might not be able to answer this, but in terms of the optimizing that fund, there you've given a couple of scenarios there, notwithstanding inflation. I'm wondering though what the implications from a taxation purpose are, and I don't know the percentage increase we're looking at. Correct me if I'm wrong, about a 6.3% at this point in time. What would be a percentage increase to the taxation rate if we were to be looking at maximizing going at 58,000 or no change? I think the no change one I got, but
through the chair, by increasing the funding in this stream, Mr. Andre will get to it on the next slide, but there wouldn't be any increase in the taxation for the CNI levy at this time. It'd be a bit of I won't share too much on that. That's on the next.
Wait for the next slides.
Yeah. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll pass it back to Mr. Andre.
Okay, through this chair. Is this 20-year plan at any level, assuming that there's no increase to the fleet?
Does the 20
that holding the fleet, same number of vehicles, same?
Through the chair, the 20-year plan does increase. Yeah, there are asset acquisitions in the 20-year plan, as well as renewals.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Thank you. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about how, maybe not how we got here, but this was the ultimate goal when we established the CNI levy, was to get to a place where we close the gap on the knowledge regarding our different asset categories. So this is the start of that work. We know as we work through and we gain more information and more knowledge about each asset category, we'll be coming back to council in the same way about each of the categories. So for now, and I won't spoiler alert for the next slide, for now, we're going to hold the levy for this year at 1.9 million. And we're going to talk a little bit now about how we're going to apportion the balance of that levy, but solidify and make sure that we protect what we know about the fleet category within that 1.9 million. And then as we gain knowledge of the other categories, we'll do that in this way. We're going to have a much more fulsome discussion about the CNI for next year's financial plan. And over the next 5 years, it's going to start to look like different. So we're not there yet in terms of increasing it, and we're not there yet in terms of considering inflation increases, but we're getting really close to it.
Thank you.
Oh, that makes my life much easier on the next slide. So as my colleagues mentioned, the 58,000 is within the same 1.9 value for 2025. Basically, it's a restructuring of the whole 1.9 value. What we are doing is taking, from all the rest of the categories, 58,000, putting into fleet and recalculate the other categories. The story here is C&I levy is sustainable for over 5 years. I think that's the good news. At the end of 2029, we're estimating a balance of 1.3 million.
Is that 11?
11.3 million, I'm sorry. And again, 5 years, that's what we are talking, that's what we are showing. But as my colleagues mentioned, asset management is a long-term plan, long-term approach. And in order to get to that long-term approach and to be sustainable in the long term, we are planning to consider increases by inflation. And again, we will come forward to council with further information on how that will work.
May I add one comment? Thank you to the chair and the council. Yes, the plan is sustainable over the next 5 years based on what we know about our assets right now. In 2024, we added all of our wastewater treatment plant assets to our register, and council's going to see that change on the audited financial statements in a month or so. And that when we get to the sewer category and have a look at those assets, this is going to start to look different. Keep in mind the life of those assets that we put in are lengthy. So you're not going to see a massive hit in 1 year. But as we gain that knowledge and share that knowledge with council and adjust that category, you're going to see more significant changes than you have in this fleet category, as an example. We started with a small category.
In terms of indicative tax rates with other municipalities, we have the two groups, the island municipalities and the RMI. For other municipalities on Vancouver Islands, as of today, we can see on average of 8.1 property tax increase. And for RMI municipalities, we can see a 7.01 average increase. As the year goes by, more municipalities will issue their property taxes, but at this point in time, it's other municipalities that presented their property taxes for 2025. Now, looking at the
Yeah, thank you through the chair. And just a quick note on that. I just want to, because it's a little deceiving when we have that, with an indicative average, because I certainly know Port Alberni has just passed a budget that unfortunately for them is higher. So it does, skew what those indicative averages are in there. So I just want council to be aware of that as well. So thank you.
Looking at the 2025 municipal property taxation and going through the lines, we are starting with the 2024 base level, which is 4.6 million coming from last year. The 6.63 adopted rate comes to $310,000 for a total of base level taxation for 2025 of 4.99. As I mentioned earlier, we do have the non-market change issued through the completed roll at the end of December. That is valued of $62,000. bringing the base level municipal taxation that includes such non-market change at just above 5 billion. CNI levy, it's the same at 1.9. Other debt servicing, it's 329, the majority of that being composed of the debts that we are paying annually for the treatment plants. That brings us to a total 2025 municipal taxes for of $7.291 million. In terms of the assessment, looking at the comparison between the 2025 completed roll and what we received in 2025 versus the revised roll of 2024. Actually, it should say 2024 completed and 2023 revised. Apologize for that. For residents, we can see a very slight decrease of less than 1%. The bigger increase we can see under utilities, that is a jump of 25%. Light industry, no change. A small increase of 6% for businesses. Recreation dropped 8% for an overall percentage change of, again, less than 1% between the two assessment rolls. Looking more in detail at the non-market change values, the breakdown between the 5 categories, the bigger one sits under residential. That is valued at 37 million. Mostly that comes from 2 areas, vacant lots that were removed from that category, and they were added 42 million in single family properties. So because of development, we had that shift in assessment for residential, and the other 2 categories we had a reduction in business and also in recreation. The breakdown of such municipal property taxation, looking at how it's been being planned for the next 5 years, but also looking at last year, the CNI levy, the mid one, it's basically the same. We do have an increase in debt, again due to water treatment plants, but also the general municipal, that is the one that kind of increasing year after year, and it can be seen on the screen. Looking ahead of the 5-year property tax, we do have the 6.63 as of now for 2025. And then we have a drop to 6 in 2026, and then a flat 4% for 2027 through 2029. And on the left-hand side, you can see the total municipal tax values. Again, to mention that total municipal tax is calculated here without the non-market change. Going through a few examples of how the tax bill will look for residents of Tofino. Again, going back to the BC assessment changes. Again, if property drops in value at the same percentage change as the BC assessment, the tax will not change, but if the property increases in value, that tax rate will change as well. So we can see that for an assessment increase of 1.2%, we have a municipal tax increase of 13%. For one property, the other one that drops 2%, the increase again without the non-market change is 9.8%. Two more residential properties. Again, one that has a drop in value, and another one that has an increase in value, and we can see that the tax increases are relevant of that increase and decrease. For businesses, we do have two examples here. Both have increases in values, and they do show an increase as well in municipal tax for 2025. And as for restaurants, two of the examples that we were able to pull are showing minimal decrease in one. One has no change, and as we can see, the tax increase is it's around 2% for each example.
Just to comment on that, what is the inflation rate now? It's somewhere around there. So this really is keeping up with inflation. It's not adjusted.
No, it's not adjusted. And that takes me to the slide where we'll look at ways of balancing the budget. As mentioned earlier, the value to get to a balanced budget is $603,000. The three options put on the screen are for discussion, with also noting that if the budget can be looked at again if needed be, but at this point, the $603,000 that needs to be covered. First option, it shows as being covered by the surplus reserve in full. That will not change the tax rate.
Just pointed at.
That will not change the tax rate. It will stay at 6.63 as currently is planned. Second option is a split between the property tax and the reserve. That shows an increase of 1% in tax increase. That will bring us the tax, property tax at just above 8%. And the third option, which presents a 2% tax increase, with the difference being covered by surplus reserve, it shows a 9.59% property tax increase.
All right, excellent. Let's just kind of look at council. I think is council, everybody clear on what the objective here? Is everybody on council clear of our options and what that means? Before we go around the corner, let's go. Let's start with you, Councilor Anderson. Start on that side. Three options.
Well, it always looks most tempting to do it from surplus. And surplus, what else would we do with surplus? So this is my question. And where does the rest of the surplus go? If we were to use that portion of option one.
Good question, Mr. Pugh. Where does, how much, where the surplus is, what is it, 1 point
To the chair is 1.5 at this point.
at this point? And what is the annual contribution to that surplus, generally speaking? Did we talk about that?
That would depend on the fiscal year, and that can vary.
Generally?
But for example, in 2024, we added 733,000.
Okay.
2023.
2023.
Okay, so it does go up and down, but it is a significant contribution to that surplus yearly, although that was pretty high.
That was high, yeah.
Is it 300,000?
Typically, we're between 300,000 and 600,000. You know, I think on average, I'd say about 450.
Okay.
So 700 was a high year.
No, I just gotta go. I need a
Oh,
point.
you need a point
Yeah,
of privilege.
Either I can just go and you guys can.
You can
continue.
interrupt for a point of try it.
Holy geez, a point of privilege,
All right.
because I need to. Because I want to focus when it gets to me.
Okay.
Over minutes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll do a 3-minute.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, if we did go with option one and balance the budget of surplus, couple of things I'd like to know about the surplus. Is that abnormally high or is it low compared to other years? Where does that fall and sort of that kind of thing? And sort of how did we get that surplus, I guess, is another thing. Is it projects that didn't get completed or were deferred, or is it just savings we had in spending over the fiscal year? And then what else might that surplus be used for, or where would it go? A bunch of things about that surplus. I don't mind spending it. It seems like a bonus every time we have a surplus, but it also represents over taxation. So, yeah, maybe some context on the surplus.
Through the chair, because there's a lot of historical context there, I may start providing comments, but then I can pass it back to you. Okay, so 600,000 is a high value to take from surplus. And when we've had this discussion in the past, we talk about our budget sustainability. Talk about if we are drawing significant funds from surplus to balance the budget from year to year, are we taxing effectively? When we presented during the tariff discussion and when we presented during COVID, those are sort of unique times and scenarios where we did during COVID use a larger amount of surplus to balance the budget. I don't have that number in front of me, but that was a huge part of our discussion in terms of reducing taxation, also relying on surplus to balance our budget that year. Because we are going into a time with some financial uncertainty, it wouldn't be unusual for us to lean more heavily on surplus, but we also have to balance that with ensuring that we're responsibly moving forward and ensuring that we have sustainability in our budget. We were expecting, a higher tax value this year because of the wastewater treatment plant, but because we haven't locked in the full amount of debt servicing or full amount of the debt yet, we're not seeing that pressure on taxation yet, and we may see a milder impact on taxation if we don't have to lock in that full portion. So there's some, it wouldn't necessarily in a year like this year, but keeping in mind we're going to have some difficult years coming up here with inflation becoming, expected to be quite a bit higher. It wouldn't be unusual in this year to lean a bit more heavily on. So the three options we provided, all three of them do lean quite heavily on surplus, even if there is another additional one. I hope that ends it over.
I have a comment. about this. Can we do comments and questions? Because they're kind of going the same. Yeah, you don't have to sit down. I'm not grilling you, just a comment. I noticed with the market change this year, it has shifted onto the business class quite significantly. So the business class is seeing a significant increase in their taxation, more so than the residential class, which has been the trend for many years. That is reversed. I personally, noting we technically overtaxed quite a bit last year, that's why we had surplus, would go with option one. This year I have no problem. That's right.
Just one comment about the generation of surplus and how that's produced, because I don't think I answered that question, and your comment, Mayor Law, kind of touches on that. It's not 100% generated from taxation. User fees and charges play a large part in generating surplus from year to year. It's very difficult for us to budget exactly what user fees and charges will be. And we have to budget conservatively for those because we don't know what type of activity is going to occur in the year to, verify that revenue number. So because of that, we typically generate a large amount of that surplus from user fees and charges rather than taxes.
I was a little bit hesitant to say overtaxed, but it came up and that's good.
It's okay. No.
There you go. Corrected, stand corrected. But I still am okay with number one. Why don't we just go down the line, and I'm going to start with Councillor McMaster, and you can just give an option and we'll look for consensus.
Okay, well, I think we're all facing turbulent economic times, so I'm in favour of maintaining our surplus this year because I think we may need it next year. So I tend to favour option two. Option one. Option three looks a little bit drastic to me.
Okay.
Option two.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, and touching on Councilor McMaster, unfortunately, I'm more inclined towards option one, and based on those economic uncertainties that we're certainly facing this year. And thanks for the explanation on these surpluses and where those comes, because as Mayor Law has pointed out, there can be, when we see a year-over-year surplus, could be seen as maybe that we are overtaxing. Thanks for the clarification on the fees and charges that to make up part of that, but also with that we also do have reviews, and that's of our user fees and charges, which I think we've clearly indicated is an important consideration in which we had done last year. So I'm in favor of option one because of the challenges this year, but clearly recognize the challenges of using surplus in a given year, and the fact that it is a tool though for us to be able to do this on these uncertain times.
Great.
I could go with you too. I'm okay with a little bit of tax increase to keep surplus there. I know it's turbulent times, but I think they're going to be more turbulent in the next year as things are uncertain now, but things might get dire.
Yeah, I agree with all the councillors that spoke before me, and I think I'm leaning towards option two because I feel like we could be facing more uncertainty and we may need to rely heavily on that surplus in the future. So I think I am comfortable with one or two, but I think my preference is two.
Okay.
I'm comfortable generally with one or two, although I lean towards one because I do believe that we will have to go a little heavier on taxation in the future. And so this would be a time for people to acknowledge and prepare for that.
Hey, Councillor Anderson, I believe you'll be the tiebreaker.
Okay,
Maybe calculate it.
well,
I'm not a counselor.
based on what Councillor Dwyer is saying, if we did go with option one and we were looking at the impact of an increase might be greater over one this year to the next year budget cycle. But if we went with option two, that increase would be less impactful. So option two.
Two? See, okay.
One or two, or maybe a 0.5%.
No, pick one.
Split the
Can we
difference.
tell you?
4-3. For option one. Should we do a vote? Okay, since it's over the line for 4-3, I will say we're just gonna, I'll make the recommendation. I believe it's 1 over, might be 0.5 over. Move to approve option one, balancing the budget. Seconder by Councillor Steer. Any further comments?
They could split the difference and go for 0.5%.
The compromise.
Yeah. So we can do that. I mean, it's just numbers. We could do that. We could say, make it 7.2. We did that last year. We could do that. I mean, it's right down the middle, so actually technically council should probably look for something that isn't 1 or 2. Do we want to say 7 point?
Option 1.5.
Do you want to come back with something else, or, I mean, this is a big, come on.
Entirely up to council, but now that you have a motion on the floor, it's really.
Option, we can amend the option,
Or
we can
amend.
amend the motion to add 0.5 onto option one. I will make that amendment.
Second.
Okay, seconded, so now we're adding 0.5 increase to option one. Sorry. Do we have to make any adjustments? That's good, and it will, I guess you'll decide whether it comes out of whatever. Okay, right, that's the motion on the table. It's amended, seconded. So
I will second it so we can have comment.
Seconded, so a comment on the amendment.
Yeah, I'm once again, you know, because of the information that staff are giving us around the surplus there, and once again, you know, we are wiggling here on numbers. The amount, I think it's comfortable to say that I'm uncomfortable with a tax increase going above this stated 7.63 indicated. I think it's a statement in general that we're going to be responsible, and if we have tools available to us to be able to mitigate any tax increase above what has been presented here, I would not be in support of 0.5. I'm still clearly in support of option number one, unamended. So I would not be in favor of the amended motion.
Okay, so we have, just to reiterate, we've got a 0.5 increase for option one, which is the basic tax level increase of 7.13, I believe it is. Might as well take some time to do this. Councillor Thomas?
I was gonna say, you probably would be down for option two, because I said between the two of them, I'd lean more that way, but I could go with option. I think if once we get into splitting that, it's going to be such a minuscule number. And not to say that that's like, you know, $35,000 isn't a lot of money, that is a ton of money, but in the big picture of our budget, it's not a ton of money.
Why don't I call the question on adding the 0.5? We can defeat it and keep talking, because we do have the option of saying, giving a tax number that we're willing to go that's below 7, above 6.6, and tell everybody to make it. Do that too. We did that last year. We go 6.9, 6.93. Still has a little bit, whatever. I mean, I don't want to get too crazy here, but let's just, I'm going to call the question on adding 0.5 to option one. If that's defeated, we can go back and try again, but we'll only do one more time. So all in favor of option one plus 0.5. Okay, it's defeated. All opposed? Okay, defeated. Let's go back. We have option one. Do we want to vote on option one, or do we want to mess with the percentage and say 6.93?
I'd like to make the motion that we go with option one. We're back to the main motion. Oh, that was the amendment. We're back to the main motion. Sorry.
Okay, if there's no further comment, then I will call the vote on option one. 6.63. All in favor? Motion's carried. Unopposed. Democracy.
Lowest common denominator.
Opposed? Okay,
I'll move to North Korea if you don't.
Sorry. I will step out and just letting you know that.
let's see what we
So I'll
got.
follow over.
That's fine. Yeah, you can just say. We can just waive it.
Okay.
You don't have to let anybody know. Okay, carry on.
In terms of next steps, we are looking on receiving the revised assessment rule, which, by the way, was issued last night. So we have a bit of work ahead of us to have that analyzed and reviewed. As well as we are waiting on a few tax requisition from other agencies that supposed to happen sooner than later, as well as through those 2 points above the draft tax rates will be calculated. Again, to remind council that the bylaws, financial plan and tax rates are April 15. And that is the next step in our financial plan 2025-2029.
Excellent. That's it.
And that concludes my presentation.
Excellent. Thank you. Back to my, so we're moving on to item 9, question period. Let's check.
Mayor Law, I will now make a call for questions. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to ask a question, you can now using the Q&A function. Before asking a question, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. No questions, Mayor Law.
Okay, super. Then I'll move from the chair. The meeting be closed. Public pursuant to sections 91A, C, and L of community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about identifiable individual. The position as an officer, employer, agent, municipality, or another position appointment. Labor relations or other employment. Discussions with municipal officers, employees, respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress, for the purpose of running an annual report on section 98 annual municipal report. Here, I'll give it. Opposed motions